And welcome to Dude, What's the Bid? We're live here on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter. Here talking about everything freight. Episode 36. We're live every Thursday here, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central. My name is Kevin Hill with Brush Pass Research. And as always, joined by Casey Larkin over at Fairlanes. How are you doing this week, Casey?
Yeah, doing well. It's a little chilly, I think, everywhere, but excited the heat's working well and things are starting to pick up. So
it is. So talking about the heat and cold, I have bootleg cable, so I can watch all the locals. Right, it's great in football season too. Right, watch every game without the ticket.
Really, Kevin?
Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't say this on live, but whatever. But I was watching New Orleans on Tuesday. New Orleans local TV. It was my first job out of college was in New Orleans, so I spent a little time there long ago. And I had an aunt that lived there for a long time too. So been going to New Orleans for forever. First time the city trucks had ever plowed snow. I mean, it was a sight to behold. And all along the Gulf Coast, right on the beach.
Yeah.
Snow, like 10 inches of snow.
Unreal, dude. I saw videos of people out on the beach in Destin, 5-6 inches of snow. I saw a video of a guy going out to his front steps on Bourbon Street and salt his front steps with some Creole seasoning.
Yeah.
It worked pretty well, but it's really unbelievable cold snap snow for that part of the country.
It really is. I'm glad I didn't have a vacation time for this time of year down along the Gulf shores. Anywhere in Bama or Louisiana or certainly Pensacola and Destin and Panama City. Can you imagine that?
No, I cannot.
Yeah.
Absolutely slammed. I know a lot of folks in the logistics industry and in the Southeast like to steal away to the redneck Riviera, but hopefully they didn't schedule their trips this time of year.
I know, right? It's so you had that, you had the cold blast, everybody's getting hit with it. I don't think there's a lot of disruption to logistics above I-20, certainly. It's just cold, just barely cold. It's one of those polar vortexes. It hasn't been too bad here, but it's been cold, in the 30s.
Unbelievable winter. Interested to see how it's affecting the rates. I haven't done too much research on my end, but interesting to see if there's anybody in the chat with any experience. Maybe Josh has some anecdotal stuff. I know he's got a CRM. I'm sure he's seen a lot of rates and things in there. But
he's got a lot of visibility, and that's our guest for this week, Josh Lyles. He's the founder and CEO over at Salesdash. And let's just bring him up and see what he's saying and talk to him.
Yeah.
How you doing today, Josh?
What's up, fellas? How's it going?
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. Good to be on Dude, What's the Bid?
Have you been seeing any action in January that because of the cold stretches, hearing anything from customers?
So we don't store rates or quotes or anything like that for customers. We're going to be adding some quote functionality, or at least just to be able to capture quotes and stuff. That'll be stuff that we look at. But, I think when we're just talking to customers, we'll kind of try to hear about their optimism or pessimism, based on stuff that's going on. I think at like the end of the year, you probably heard a little bit more optimism, but I think as the year's just kind of started, I feel like I've just heard people just really say that stuff hasn't fully changed, and they're just trying to control what they can control. So that's, everybody's answer is a little bit different. We work with people that move all kinds of freight, all kinds of different modes, all kinds of different areas, territories, that stuff. But always interesting to kind of just get a pulse, from each customer you speak with.
It is. It is. So, and for audience that maybe not familiar with Salesdash and what you guys are doing, lay it all out for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So Salesdash CRM, we're one of the only freight specific CRMs for freight sales teams. You can manage your shipper leads, lanes, follow-ups. You can also organize carrier lane preferences within the CRM. So, we work with definitely a lot of brokerages more than anybody else, but we work with brokerages, agencies, as well as even just asset-based companies, or, sometimes there's asset-based companies that are spinning up a brokerage division or looking to have their brokerage division, take on a little bit more of the overflow and those kinds of things. But I would say more brokerage dominant for the majority of our customer base. We work with over 150 customers right now in the freight industry. So yeah, a lot of people use it on the shipper prospecting side. You can think of us as almost just like a lighter version of, let's just say, Salesforce or HubSpot. Those are commonly, the two, basically like the two main CRMs that will be measured up against. And in its simplest form, I mean, we just basically cut out all the stuff that you typically would not use within Salesforce and HubSpot, which can be a lot of different things, and just a lot more focused on the features, functionality that people in the freight sales process would want to have. And so it's already templated out. You don't have to hire somebody from the outside to do any of the customizing or anything of that nature within the CRM. A lot of it is just already there for you, sometimes more customized than if you hired somebody from the outside. A big challenge that we see with that when people do that is you got to go teach somebody what a shipper is, what a carrier is, what the sales process is like, spot freight, contract freight, and
know what the shipper is.
Yeah, exactly. And like, good luck with that. So, yeah, man, it's really fun. We're solely focused in this space. For me, I previously oversaw 2 different teams in brokerage, and before brokerage, I was at Tesla in their earlier years. As a sales rep to start off with, and then as a manager. And CRM was just a really big, I know a lot of salespeople don't like CRMs. I'm very aware of that.
But what did you use at Tesla? Sorry to cut you off.
Salesforce.
Right.
Yep. So when I was there, they used Salesforce. When I left, they actually ended up, I believe, building their own proprietary system, which honestly looked just like it. But yeah, when I was there and when I sold, I was using Salesforce in particular. And yeah, man, I just like dove into it deep when I was a sales rep. I had certain experiences where when I learned certain things that like the directors would tell us about who was most likely to buy a Tesla, I got really deep into building reports and the customization and that stuff. But it took a lot of time to figure that stuff out. A lot of times it's like a 30-40 minute video on YouTube. So it's not, there's a reason why they have certifications. It's almost like, getting an MBA and building that stuff out. So yeah, the whole goal for us has been to simplify that, man. It's been to simplify it to where you don't have to do that stuff. It's really easy. You can call, email us, and normally you can get that stuff taken care of in a minute. So that's kind of the whole goal and objective there.
It is. I can really see certifications, right? Because it is complex. It is complex. Yeah. I remember when Casey and I were at FreightWave, said on the media side, we went through the ERP system. It wasn't CRM, but it was an ERP system. And I sat through meeting after meeting after meeting of different vendors. And honestly, most of it just flew over my head. I didn't quite know what they're even talking about. You get into it, it's very complex.
Yeah, and it's challenging too if they just don't understand your business that well, right? They're showing you a bunch of features and functionality that probably have nothing to do with what you would actually need. So yeah, it's super common for us to hear like, hey, we're paying for a bunch of stuff that we're just not using.
Yeah, and when the most glaring things when you look at CRMs, the sales process workflow, right? That the 1 through 5 in the sales process, which is set up not for the freight industry whatsoever, because the freight industry, when you're selling to shippers and you're selling, especially freight brokerage services, that sales process. I've seen a lot of organizations. I've been in organizations where we just kind of shoehorn it in there, right? It's like, number 2, they say is, demo or discovery, or we're going to call it this, but you had a lot of just coding by the fly, or templates.
Yeah. So, we already have a lot of that stuff templated out where we'll talk people through sort of what's in there, but we'll always have people where they already kind of have their own internal language, which is great. So all we want to do is just kind of meet them with what they speak about internally. So if you already have that stuff, and, we work with people that sometimes they'll maybe use like the light version that a TMS has of a CRM. which is going to be pretty limited in functionality, or sometimes they are using a pretty complex, robust CRM that they don't know how to customize or have struggled customizing. Or sometimes they're still using spreadsheets, man. Like there's still a lot of people out there that still use the good old spreadsheets or a combination of both. I think that we just do a good job of also kind of like working with teams in particular to sort of meet them with what makes the most sense and how they work internally.
For sure. It doesn't really make sense when I think about it to use an industry agnostic CRM if there are industry specific CRMs that, are offered, right? Like a Salesdash. I mean, in my experience, last time we were on Salesforce, the same Salesforce instance that Kevin was talking about, you got to hire somebody, right, that knows how to build on Salesforce, build out the CRM in a way that, you guys want it to be built for your own organization. And then, additionally, another huge hurdle that I always hear about when I'm talking with folks and they're getting their sales team spun up, building a CRM, or they get to some type of maturity and they didn't set their CRM up as cleanly or as well as they could have initially, and they've scaled now and they're generating a couple $1 million, but the infrastructure that they have inside their CRM, needs a total rebuild.
Yeah, that part, I think, I mean, it's important to have that from even a day one basis. So it's even cool when we're talking with people that are just spinning one up. But if you can do that, it just makes your data cleaner over time. And like a small example of that, a lot of people, it's so common to just use like an other field, within a system. And that doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you a story, right? So an example of that in freight would be, you got a brokerage, they, typically are only doing like full truckload or, maybe some partial freight, but they don't do LTL yet, maybe, right? Or it could be vice versa. Well, if LTL is something that you guys may be exploring down the road, or a different mode or equipment type, whatever it may be, like those are going to be good leads for you down the road. If it is something that you plan to expand to, or, would like to in the future, to be able to segment that accordingly. But again, like if the other is there, we often find it's just easy for the sales rep to say, hey, everything's going to go in that area. And
if everything goes in the other, right, but there's no way to mine that data out at a later point to see what your opportunities really are. Are you talking to a lot of people that are focused on LTL and you don't really have an offering? Well, who's going to dig through all the other comments in a spreadsheet to figure this out? Someone's got to do it, and no one wants to do it because it is a pain in the ass to do, right?
Right.
So it's that quintessential other category that makes everyone's life just more difficult.
It's more popular than it should be, Kev.
I know it is.
That's the path of least resistance.
I was a sales rep.
In my experience, the sales rep, you got this drop down menu to like tag some lead or some deal, and there may be 15 options there, and none of them really fit the bill for like what the actual lead source was, right? So you kind of just default to choosing other. In my experience, anyways, so I get it.
Yeah. No, those are the small nuanced things, right? So we try to work with people on that, to be thinking about that, and again, it all sort of depends on what they specialize in and the things that commonly come up. But we've just wanted to make that to where, hey, if you need to add those disqualified reasons or to make those kinds of changes, ideally we want people to make that on the spot within 20, 30 seconds, very quick. So it's easy to do. And then it's really easy to report on that stuff as well, for all those reasons. So if they are disqualified due to LTL or, any of those other reasons that you guys listed, that's stuff that, I would say like pretty simple, basic stuff for the most part that will help people out with a little bit more.
I'm going to ask both of you guys, Casey, you go first. On a scale of 1 to 10, on your skills in documenting what you're doing into a CRM, right? Maybe not your skills, but how do you apply that? How well do you document your sales activity into a CRM throughout your career? 1 to 10, 10 being best, 1 being worst. Give me a number.
I'd probably give you like a 3 or a 4.
For yourself.
Yeah, for myself.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not logging everything. Yeah, the extent stuff was gamified, right? You're logging meetings, or you've got the auto log on emails going. That stuff's great, but I'm certainly not creating an opportunity until I know somebody's going to sign that deal, because it's just not worth the time, right? And I don't want to get questions in pipeline meeting.
I would challenge you on that, Casey. I would challenge you on that one right there.
I'm sure it's not the best practice. I guarantee you it's not the best practice. But I think maybe this is kind of what Kev is begging at a little bit.
It is. So Josh, what about you? When you're a broker and at Tesla, right?
Even right now.
Even right now, yeah, especially right now.
Yeah.
1 to 10.
I'm in it every day. Yeah, and we use Salesdash, so that's lucky. That's kind of a
document
lucky.
Everything.
Yeah, no, I do. So I think this is different for every sales rep, and like the last team that I managed, honestly, a lot of them. So let's just talk sales really quick. But you talk about like the top characteristics for really good salespeople. Listening's easily at the top, right?
Yep.
And like from my experience in management, there's some reps where they need like everything cleared out from them, and they just need to be able to just have the conversation with who they're talking to, right? I have to be just crazy note taking, like while I'm on any kind of call, demo, and even if it's just abbreviation. So, for example, when I was at Tesla, oddly enough, like I worked at Linux Mall out of Atlanta to start off with in Buckhead. So we had iPads out on the floor, and I would just like jot down stuff, but basically in one word. So I knew, hey, when I get back into the back office, I can expand on those notes. And it's kind of the same when I'm on calls and everything. I'll do that. So then that way, once I'm done with the call, I'll do that. But I think I'm wasting my time if I don't have those notes. And this is just from, I would say all 3 areas: being at Tesla, being in brokerage, also now, selling freight tech with Salesdash. Is if I don't have those, like I'm gonna forget, because if you are having enough conversations, and any salesperson is typically having a lot on a daily basis, it's just easy for me to forget. But I feel like for me to be actively engaged in the conversation, making sure I'm actively listening, it just works for me to be note taking. I would actually say, though, the majority of the reps that I've managed typically like need to not be note taking, while they're on the call. So everybody's a little bit different, but that's also kind of to a fault, the reason why I'm a CRM nerd. But it helps me out so much. And one of my smallest favorite things about CRM is like 6 months goes by really fast in sales. And when that 6 months goes by and then that task pops up to follow up with that person, man, like I love that feeling. It's great.
I would say the 6 hours flies by sometimes, right?
Yeah, even that.
Between your phone conversations with prospects, but if you're managing your own freight as well, by the time 6 hours passes, sometimes 60 minutes, right? You forget everything about that conversation. And you're making me feel self-conscious. So I picked up my notepad. I'm not taking any notes, but I feel like I should have one in my hand. But yeah, on me, it's like a 3. I was never great at documenting things, especially in a CRM. I might actually document it much better for myself. But then you have to transfer it in, and you get distracted. Either a customer's calling you, or a truck's calling you, or you need to see the highlights of a baseball game the night before that you haven't caught yet, and you just kind of put it off. So I think a lot of people would say 3, 4. That you have your superstars like yourself who are 8, 9, 10s. I think we can all agree the importance of an organization, of management and leadership, on having a well-run CRM.
Yeah,
that's a 10. That's a 10.
So, and especially in freight too, right?
Yeah.
Where like you've got a TMS as well, which is like a super critical piece of technology. And if your CRM and your TMS don't work together, like that's not great. You're not necessarily setting yourselves up for success. That's why I don't know. I used to think that Revenova would be, one of the bigger TMS providers out there, simply because they're integrated with Salesforce. But does make sense now that there's folks out here like a Josh working on Salesdash with industry specific CRM that probably is much easier to use and much more helpful for folks than Salesforce is in this industry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and like even Kevin, I think going back to your comment, because that's what I'm fairly passionate about from like a management standpoint, and I think also just for myself. But I would argue, like with reps in particular, right? If and for any of them that like don't want to actually have those notes and all that stuff, I think you're just losing efficiency towards like what you're doing on a day in and day out basis, right? Because you are gonna forget that stuff. And I always just kind of quantify it as it's like it's front end work to make you more efficient on the back end, because on the back end it's gonna come back to bite you no matter what, right? If you don't have that stuff, you forget about it. You got to restart in that sales process all from the beginning again, because you don't retain that. And I'm not knocking you like specifically, because this is super common. Like I would say a lot of people are at a 3 and a 4. With
I would
stuff,
say most people are.
Yeah.
When you start running your own business stuff, you become a 10. Because it's vitally important, right? It's
for
not
sure.
So much, you have a lot of money paying out every day, right? You got to make it, and you got to take it really seriously. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, on the importance for management, leadership, running a business, it's a 10. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that, because you want the data, you want the reports, you have to know what's going on the floor, and I think it's just an age-old tension between people who are putting in information and doing other things and people who need it in all industries. I don't think it's freight specific whatsoever. CRMs are important in any industry, and there's always that conflict of there's not enough data in there.
Right. And like, I don't know, I guess from the salesperson's perspective as well, I would have spent more time in Salesforce, integrating my calendar with Salesforce, using the task management tools in there. Like if it made more sense for me at the time, right? But, if, you've got reps out there that, have their process, they're setting the next meeting, they've got a way to record the call or the notes. You lose a lot of that data that may be being recorded somewhere else. Maybe it's, on their calendar, maybe it's in their text messages, maybe it's, in a number of disparate places, just because it doesn't make sense for them to use the CRM as their kind of like end all be all interface. So I'd love to learn more about like how you guys are building this thing specific to the freight industry. I know that a lot of people in freight sales are communicating with trucks, communicating with customers, a lot of different channels, a lot of different ways. And I don't know if it makes sense to do it right now. I'd love to see a live demo of the thing as well, if you want to show us how it works at some point while we're on here as well.
Yeah, I'd have to get stuff loaded up, but yeah, I'd be open to doing that towards the end for sure.
Well, let's do this comment right here and talk about it. Bill Montoya. I take physical notes for calls and meetings. Taking notes can definitely be a little tedious, especially entering them into CRM afterwards. But being able to document and go back to detailed notes helps move conversations along. And that's the most important part about it too, because I mean, I forget 90% of conversations sometimes, especially if I'm busy during the day. And those important little nuggets, I'll remember them 3 weeks later. But it's tough. So you always have to document everything.
Yeah, and everybody does it a little bit differently, Like, I mean, in line with Bella's comment, there's a lot of people that, and sometimes even writing stuff down. I mean, I'm pretty sure that there's scientific fact around this that it can help you actually remember the detail a little bit better. I honestly don't write anything down. I type because I'm a relatively faster typer, and for me, like, it just automatic. Like, I'm just basically, while I'm on the call, I just am adding it into the CRM as I'm going along. But, like one of the ways that we use Salesdash, like myself, Drew, our sales guy, and, and then I guess how we also position it with those in freight, for example, is like we have the shipper info area in Salesdash where when it goes to qualifying and disqualifying a shipper, the information's in there, right? And I think it's as simple as when you're reaching out to a shipper, like, do they move the equipment types? Do they move the modes? Do they move the volume that you would want to be continuing to prospect, right? Because disqualifying is just as important as qualifying. If they move one shipment every 6 months, does it make sense for you to keep following up with them? Answer, I think, on that is probably not, right? Like they don't need to be somebody that you're giving a shout to every other couple of days, once a week, even like once a month. Totally up to you, obviously, of how you choose to run your business. But yeah, from an efficiency standpoint, whatever makes most sense in you qualifying, like you want to, if you specialize in flatbeds and hot shots, like you obviously want to make sure that they move that, if depending on the modes that they ship, the volume, like all those things. And so we just kind of have that like very simplified to where, shoot, even if you're on a call, like it's really easy to even have that stuff to build the profile to say, do we know if they move this stuff or do they don't? And then also obviously, like if that information is not there, those are questions that I would say in your prospecting follow-ups that you can seek to try to understand a little bit more. And look, the other reality is there's a lot of freight brokers that aren't going to do that. They're just going to basically just go try to get quotes and just keep it straight around pricing. So everybody's sales methodology is a little bit different. I feel like that's just kind of the beauty of the game.
Definitely.
Well, the discovery, right? It helps you if you have if you have your CRM lined up the right way, you have it open. It helps in discovery qualification.
Yeah,
because you're hitting on all those important points that you need to know, and the organization needs to know, which is always important, right? I mean, there's a reason why there's a CRM. Certainly to help the sales rep out, but to help the organization out. I mean, I window into 20 sales reps or 10 sales reps or 50 sales reps and know what's going on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think discovery is, the most important, like it should always be every salesperson's first step of their sales process, right? Like one of the things I will say that frustrates me, because I love paying attention to how people try to sell me, because then I can take bits and pieces of what I feel works, I feel works on me or what doesn't work, right? So, I think the one thing that's super clear that I realized is like everybody emails, like they all email. I've gotten one cold call so far this month. It was 2 days ago. It was at 6:15 from some guy in San Francisco, but I pick up because I never get calls, and I'm always open to it because I'm a big believer in sales karma. That if I give him the time of day, and if I'm reaching out to somebody or Drew on my team's reaching out to somebody, that stuff can that it'll come back around. I think it's an energy thing. But yeah, I mean, the one thing I will say from like the pitches that come inbound are nobody really takes the time to understand like what you do and to actually figure out if there's a potential need, right? Like they're just going straight into a pitch.
Yep.
And even Kevin, if that's like with you working with other freight tech vendors, like based on the data that you have, you would want to confirm with them like, hey, is it relevant for you to know what brokerages are using which TMS? Like, is that helpful for you, right? Based on what or even the target size and all those things. So
the first thing I want to talk about is who you guys marketing to, because I want to say this is good for you or it's not good for you. Because if it's not good for you, I don't want to sell it to you, because it becomes more of a headache if you can't use it right for all of us. I want to know if it's, and if it is, then great. Let's talk about your business, whatever. My solution is pretty simple. It's leads. Not a lot to say about it, but then you can help them be able to use your data, and that's the big part of it.
Yep. Yeah, and then in the CRM world, I mean, it's really important because I think with any CRM, a lot of it's contextual. For example, who we're talking to, like the stuff that I'm going to share with, and that I would want to typically show with a manager who really cares more about visibility and reporting, is going to be different than the sales rep who's just like, I need to know how to get into my shipper lead, what I do in working through that lead, and then how I set, move on to my next task, how I get my follow-up set and all that stuff. So that contextually, I think, is just super important anytime when you are talking with somebody. But I think more than anything else, it's really important to understand people's situations before you just try to say like, hey, solution. Because because you can easily be wasting your time, but of course, like reaching out to them, definitely a waste of their time and loss of efficiency there.
Yeah, you have to know what kind of organization that they're. So, a freight brokerage. How many new shippers do you sign on a month, right? How many sales reps do you have making outbound calls?
Right. I remember making a prospecting program back in the days at FreightWaves. The motto for this, I did like a 5-part video series for the team. Seals don't kick in doors waving 4-4s without knowing what's behind them. Neither should we. So, like, if you're gonna reach out to somebody to have a sales conversation, like, you better have a hypothesis about what the problems are that they're dealing with and how you can solve them, right? If you don't, you're really kind of just spraying and praying. So I was always a fan of working smarter, not harder. And I think that, the CRM, the more that I think about it, was obviously a huge part of that process. It always is a great place to go and see, who are the last reps in the company that have been talking to this account, who are the contacts within, that organization that they were talking to. Are there any other contacts that I might want to talk to instead? What did Dale say to that person? What did Kevin say to that person, et cetera, et cetera? You got to build a frame for what you're walking into if you want to have a good shot at closing business. And, to your point, Kevin, not entering into sales conversations that aren't actually sales conversations.
Yeah, I think another thing to touch on to add to that, Casey, too, is, so within freight, whether you're just like traditional brokerage, whether you're an agency, obviously one of the important questions for us is, are you cradle to grave or split model? How you're going to use the CRM is important to understand that. We'll have a lot of people that will tell us that there's some kind of hybrid, among that. But even in the agency model, like take agents can have sub agents. And so, we've got certain things where you can have shared account owners. So that way, if you've got multiple people, if it's like a large enterprise shipper, you guys are trying to attack different locations and that kind of stuff, or, if it's like, hey, no, we've just got the shipper sales rep that focuses on onboarding the shipper, account managers underneath them that are really focused on obviously just getting more quotes, more loads, whatever it may be. Yeah, you can have all that, have the visibility to know like which contacts have been reached out to, which haven't. So that piece is pretty important if you're trying to really do better in terms of tracking, like, hey, what does our activity and our outreach actually look like to stay in front of these customers or prospects?
Josh, what's your ICP? What's your idea customer profile? On a brokerage specifically. We're talking about qualification, not qualifying.
Yeah.
What are you looking for?
Yeah. So I will say, like, going up until this year, we have been going after typically like smaller brokerages. Honestly, we kind of focus obviously more on team size, I would say, than anything else. But basically, like, going through about until like Q4 of last year, we wouldn't normally have reached out to somebody that normally had over, like, let's just say 200 employees at their company. And we've kind of like inched our way up, I would say, opposite how a lot of software companies do, where they'll typically go enterprise first, obviously, because they want to get the larger deals, to pay investors back and stuff. But we're a bootstrap company, so we're doing stuff a little bit opposite. But I would say in particular, like ICP wise, one of the more important things is actually on the behavioral side of just, are you growth driven? Like, are you actually looking to grow your brokerage? Because there's been plenty of times where, we would be talking to people and they're just like, hey, we're just trying to maintain our customer base and what we have. So it's easy to go with the demographics to say, they do up to 200 million in revenue, or they're of this employee size and whatnot. But I also think one of the things that's been interesting for us is we do have to find those people that align on those behaviors that are actually driven for growth. Because if you're not, then yeah, you don't give a damn about making a cold call or doing anything of that nature.
Yeah, and that's really important in brokerage. It was one of the first lessons I found selling in freight brokerages. You have to have people with the same mindset as the solution you're selling, right? Whenever I was out selling carrier lists, right? Are you looking for alternative capacity type of solutions, right? Are you looking for capacity? Or are you trying to find that hard? looking for different alternatives. Yes, great. No, my guys just post and pray, and that's all they do. Okay.
Probably pretty common too to hear that.
Yeah, I know, right? And at that point, it's just like, oh, well, I'm going to have to talk to this person into doing something they don't really want to do. And probability of that's low. And the time it's going to take is low. So I'll just say not right now. No, not right now, which is good, because their situation could change tomorrow, a year from now, 2 years from now. So you just keep them in the loop, stay connected, and go on and find people in the right cultural fitting for who's going to be a power user, right? Because people who buy your products and don't use it correctly or to the full advantage that they can do are going to be disappointed. Just a fact of life. Yep. And it's going to take a lot of time and resources to fight through that, right? To try to get them to use it properly, and it's usually a losing battle. So that's a big part of discovery.
Yeah, and I you kind of have to just accept it, right? Like, it's okay. Yeah. Not everybody's gonna have a similar philosophy or alignment. Not everybody's driven for growth. Yeah. Like there are plenty of people that sort of want to just maintain what they've got, and I mean, you can't knock them for it. Like, I can't force anybody to say like, hey, I want you to go try to get an extra shipper a month. Like, I can't. There's nothing that I can physically do on my end to get them to be inspired to do that stuff. So I have to be okay with, hey, they're just not going to be a great fit, in that aspect. And sometimes even on the tech side, like, let's talk, if it comes about the tech stack for what they use, if they've built all of their software themselves, if it's all proprietary in-house, not going to be a good fit, right? Like, it's going to be out of the ICP. But it's also still good for us to note, because I will say there's also been a couple times where, whether it's people have said, hey, we're going to go try to work to build an in-house CRM, TMS, like whatever it may be. But obviously for us, we care about the CRM. It's really easy for them to primarily focus on the TMS and not get super focused on the CRM, because like Casey mentioned earlier, the TMS is, it's the holy grail for them. So we have had some people come back and say, hey, we're not devoting that much time, attention, effort towards this. We've had, 2 more conversations recently for people that went and did that. Now they're buying off the shelf. And, I wonder if we'll even see more of that trend, throughout this year, because like, just the truth of the matter is, like, building software is not the easiest thing to do in the world, and I love it from our seat, because we get really unique perspectives from all kinds of different customers. And, we actively action on all the feedback that they give us to work to continue to enhance the system. And I'm a big little things person. I kind of always view it from the salesperson's perspective to start off with. So like, the little feedback that we get of like, it removes one click in this area, or, it keeps everything in one screen. I'm super big on that, and how I use it daily. But obviously for our customers, I think it's really important for them to just try to enjoy using the CRM. Like, that's a big mission for me, man. Like, how do we get sales reps to actually say like, we enjoy the CRM versus the typical CRM sucks nature that can be out there. So it's a big goal for us.
Definitely. I mean, I'm sure your experience, time moving freight, knowing what these guys are experiencing on the day-to-day has helped create a user experience that, is more enjoyable. And wondering, do you guys have any integrations with TMS companies? Do you guys communicate with any of those?
Yeah, so we've been actively working on that right now. Just like, the general metrics that people want to bring in. We don't have any, I would say, like, official partnerships with TMSs. It's something that we've been kind of inching towards, because their APIs typically, like, I would say, kind of suit better with other freight tech systems versus what somebody on the sales aspect would be looking for. It's a lot of general reporting stuff, which a lot of times is not within API documentation. And so for us, like, there's other ways through APIs that we have to work to try to get that information into the system. But a lot of it's all very unique TMS by TMS. I don't want to like call out names specifically of like which ones that we've started to get some data in from and not, because I think it makes more sense like when there's more of an official partnership to, be a little bit more public about that. But there's 4 pretty common TMSs that a lot of our customers use, I would say. So we've sort of started just working at building some kind of feed within that data for those 4. And, you know, ideally, hopefully here within the next 3 months, we'll have some more like official partnerships on that side and like more native integrations to make it a lot easier to get that stuff done. So, you know, even going back to the ICP, big goal for us right now is working up market, going after some of the larger brokerages. We needed to just get a little bit stronger on the technicality aspect with our API documentation, being able to integrate with other systems. So I feel like we've gotten ourselves to a point where we're pretty well suited for that going into this year. Still some things that we're working to tighten up a little bit, but yeah, that's a big goal for us right now is going up market, getting after some of those top 100s.
It's a process, isn't it? It is.
It takes time. Yeah.
It is a process, isn't it? It's just it's a process that building a tech product it's not done overnight.
No, and
it's not.
Yeah, and the integrations thing is, I mean, I think it's always going to be, you know, a little bit of a challenge because the way that every company, you know, operates with this and the way that they've structured their software is all just a little bit unique and it's a little bit different. So, but for us, like we have to be up for the challenge, right? Because if it's a challenge for us, it's going to be a challenge for those that use other CRMs or other systems. And, you know,
Right.
we want to be able to be that provider that, hey, we have, you know, not only like the sales know-how of the use cases, because I think one of the things I've kind of, you know, found within this journey within, you know, I'm going to still always label myself as more of like a salesperson, sales, you know, led founder. But from the technical side is like with integrations, you guys will see so much about like, oh, we integrate with this person or, you know, we built a channel partnership, but
Right. So
integration, yeah, exactly. It's wildly vague, man. There, and I think people talking through the use cases, like to me, even when I see that with some of the TMSs, we get like many of the same requests. Like most of the time it's 90% the same kind of thing, or a lot of people don't know what they're looking for. Or it's like, it's extremely limited. And so I know sometimes that what's being told cannot be truthful because of like what we've been able to discover and sort of see out there, or maybe they just haven't thought of the more advanced use cases that can really make a difference in the freight sales process. So, but again, like all the pains, challenges, all that stuff is all opportunity, you know, so you gotta be willing to just tackle it head on and see it as opportunity and go for it.
Definitely. A lot of not very operable data and data formats in our industry. So, I mean, you know, and it seems like the companies that are out there making some serious headway, you got to be able to work with disparate systems, right? Like everybody's going to have a different TMS. It's going to be different than the next guy, right?
But on that topic too, I mean, sometimes I think people also get too tied up saying like, hey, this system needs to integrate with this system, when I would actually say in some cases, like some of them don't, you know, and they're asking for something that like not all information from your TMS needs to be in your CRM, right? And not all your information from your CRM needs to be in your TMS. You can clutter and honestly, basically cause complexities between the systems and stuff. It's also a reason why BI tools are so popular, right? Because they can have all the analytics of all the systems that you have. And so sometimes it makes sense to have the majority of your stuff over there. So I think what your strategy is of how you're thinking about that can also save you money, time, and headaches if you can understand like what actually needs to be more appropriately in which systems.
We've been talking about CRM from the shipper standpoint, right? From the traditional customer of a freight brokerage. Let's talk about the carrier point.
Man, so yeah, this is going to be a big project for us this year. We lightly started on this last year, early last year. And then I think we kind of, you know, I would say the shipper sales side, the prospecting side is usually the bread and butter of, you know, what we do. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us on the carrier sales side. I would say like the way people are sort of using it within our system, and the reason why we even built something to start off with was we found it very common where just many brokerages, doesn't really matter what TMS system that they use or anything like that, would often, like the reps would just have their top carriers that they like to run with in a spreadsheet. So these are their top carriers. These are the lanes they like to run. This is their equipment. This, you know, this is how to get in touch with them. And then I would say internally, the way that would be activated is like if somebody needed a carrier out of, Baltimore or something like that, out of Jacksonville, wherever it may be, it's an internal email to the whole team. It's a Slack or Teams message. It's walk the floor and go talk to all your carrier neighbors and sales reps and whatnot. So we wanted to just build something that is all encompassing kind of in one place. That's really simple from a lanes aspect, to just say, this is the carrier, these are lanes that they like to run, this is the equipment that they have. So that way, if you're looking for a carrier out of Nashville, you can search for those. You can do it from a mileage band radius. So that way, you're catching all the little outside cities outside of Nashville that aren't labeled as Nashville. So that's kind of where we started. And then we're sort of working on the next iteration of that. I would say like right now, to kind of take it a couple steps further. Probably not share like too much on it, just in general, because I've kind of gotten to a point where I want to be able to just like show people, where we're at, versus being like, oh, this is on the roadmap, because that can get pretty annoying for people. But in its current state, it's just very simple for those that are looking to prospect carriers and understand and organize their carrier lane preferences, and then have it more as an internal database. And we've seen some cool use cases, because you can also capture the lanes that your shippers run, and we'll have some teams that will basically just work together, especially if they have the split model. That, hey, if like shipper lane comes in, carrier team can obviously work to go get capacity, or try to find some trucks that would be open to running those lanes if they're a little bit more higher volume.
So that is important in freight brokers, right?
Huge, yeah.
You have a CRM. Oftentimes you have a CRM for customers, or some process in place, but not necessarily for carriers. You still find a lot of organizations that it is, it's a Slack or an email, and it's the same fire drill every single time it happens.
Yeah. I think it's one of the biggest upside opportunities that we have. And, even going back to the ICP situation, not everybody's going to be a good fit for it, because not everybody's going to be pounding the phones to prospect carriers. But for us, it's going to be, hey, we got to go find the brokerages that are looking to do that, because those are the ones that we're going to want to work with. And we feel that we'll have a really, I would say I'm pretty confident about the system and the capabilities that we're going to be able to have to be able to assist with that. It's going to take a little bit of time here, but, for us, like going into April, I think a lot of that will be live by then.
Absolutely.
Curious for you guys, just like tech wise, what's been interesting for you guys? You guys are pretty pulsed in, obviously active within the scene and whatnot. What's been interesting for you guys from what you've seen out there?
Casey?
If anything, you don't have to.
No, there's a lot of really, really interesting stuff. It seems like there's a second wave of freight tech that's coming along here. Interesting to kind of see, how many winners there are of this second wave, right? You had some initial folks trying to like boil the whole ocean, if you will. Some folks with like $1 billion valuations that don't really have those anymore, trying to Frankenstein things together. So it seems like there's a lot of folks coming out with really cool like point solutions, solve big problems and generate ROI for folks. I like the AI stuff out there. There's some cool stuff, I think, that's helping make folks, jobs a little less mundane, allow people to communicate a little bit more efficiently, data to flow freely. But yeah, I think that there's still a whole lot of opportunity in freight tech to make things more operable, make data flow a little bit more freely between silos. It seems like everybody likes to put walls up, and everybody's secret sauce is just that, their secret sauce, and they want to keep it to themselves. So it'll be I don't know, it's a fun time to be in freight tech, right? It's such a segmented industry where transportation and logistics, is one of those industries that hasn't really been digitized yet, right? I think it's like logistics and healthcare, where there's still a huge frontier to be taken advantage of, if you will.
I think on my side, interesting just to see the competitive landscape and the people coming in and how it's all going to shake out with certainly with automation and AI, but on the back office part, everything from document collection to payments, invoice generation and sending out, but actually collecting the payments as well, right? And how much more efficiently that can happen, right? I mean, you're talking about cash flow at that point, which is monumental for brokerages, and just seeing if we can get that days to pay and days outstanding down and free up some capital for the industry, because there's a lot of solutions. It's going to be a very competitive market. It's already a very competitive market, and I'm interested in seeing who are the winners and losers in 5 years. And and we had John Larkin on last week. I don't know who he's related to, but somehow he came on the show. Just kidding. But we were talking. We were talking about as the market turns in 2025. Hopefully, it becomes a much stronger market. But you have a lot of pent-up companies that should have exited over the last couple of years that haven't, just because of market conditions, the freight market, the capital markets. So you're going to see a wave of M&A on that side, which will create different organizations, because I think there's going to be a lot of strategic buys at that point. With startups that have been around 5, 6, 7, 8 years that need to exit, and the liquidity from those exits will pour back into new startups again in full force. So I find that very interesting. I'm ready for a strong M&A year.
Yeah, I feel like that will probably be pretty prevalent this year, and I feel like, especially through middle of last year, that kind of would come up a little bit more, for example, within demos for us, right? Like, hey, what's our standing, and, have we raised money? What do our partners look like? Which, again, we're bootstrapped, don't have any outside partners or anything, but some people would want to know that, because I had some guys that were a little bit pessimistic on the freight tech side that were just saying, like, hey, we think a lot of these, companies are going to go down because they may have raised too much. Unfortunately for them, maybe at the wrong time, or M&As can happen, or conflict of interest between like who their investor partners could be. So I feel like we've already seen some interesting activity the past couple months, and I definitely think that there will be some really interesting moves for the rest of the year. So it's going to be fun to watch. And
since you're bootstrapped, it's a different dynamic. It's more tenuous in the beginning, right? But the upside's much better. And give me your thoughts on going in, and I'm not, whether you're going to raise or not, but the position that you roll in when you have 150 customers compared to 0. Yeah. When you have a product as compared to a PowerPoint that shows a future product, right?
The vision.
The vision, right? How much stronger of a position you are, and the share value or the company value compared to the vision versus, hey, you got something ready to go, ready to really scale up and ramp up, and you can pour fuel on the fire and see results.
Yeah, it's a great question. Transparently, my mindset says to stay bootstrapped. The reason I personally love it because like it just, to me, it forces the right behaviors out of us to focus on growth in the right way, right? So, you hear it every now and then, but it's focus on getting customers and compared to raising capital, and it's going to be different for everybody in their own unique scenarios. I fortunately had just like saved up a good amount of money from all my days in sales. Like, I live a pretty simple, basic lifestyle. It's not extravagant by any means. And the reason why I like it though is because I do believe it actually makes us play smarter. And like, I'm always really shocked sometimes when I see these really large companies go down, and it's just because like I can't really speak for them, but it just seems like it's easy for them to lose sight of how much they're burning and how fast, right? And people not tracking spending that well. And I think from our seat, like it just helps me keep track of those things and be very methodical of what I choose to spend time, energy, and effort towards, what we're going to be looking at for, if it's marketing, if it's advertising, or, trying to get customers, what conferences, I'm always thinking about that. And like, I'm not going to take my strategy lightly on that stuff, but, I always want to try new things. I think it's just constantly kept me in the trial and error period. But yeah, I think, now that we have customer, a good base and we're going up market, for me, I just look at it as it's only going to be more fun, just kind of staying where we are, because the larger customers then make it easier to just like really get our name and face out there. Right. And we're doing it by just kind of earning it organically. So we'll see.
Hypothetically though, if you were to raise, if you said tomorrow, I'm going to go raise money, for the same dollar amount, you'd give up much less equity than you would.
Oh yeah, that too.
Stages, right.
Yeah.
It's great optionality. It's
For
great
sure.
optionality for you because the window is wide open. If you have customers, if you have cash flow coming in, you have a product on the move, you just have much more options.
Yep.
It's always better to stay bootstrapped. But
yeah, the biggest thing would just be the right people, like if you can get the right people that can make that big of an influence for you, if they've got the relationships in the space, they're good team members, like they've got, if you're more trying to focus on innovation and that kind of stuff, I mean,
you can be you can be much more selective on the investors you bring in, right?
Yep.
You just have a lot of much better options available to you at this stage if you were hypothetically going to raise money, as opposed to when you're first starting out.
Yep.
Because when you're first starting out,
you gotta get anything. You get.
Anything. I'll worry about it later, right? And then you really worry about it later sometimes. But at this point, you can be selective, right? You can go at your own pace. You can. So, I guess my whole point is, it's always better to raise money or to be in a position
later on
than early on.
Yep. It's fun.
As far as you can delay it is better for you. And if you can delay it to infinity and just never do it, even better.
Just wait till the IPO, Casey. Is that what you said?
Yeah, exactly. Take it to the public markets with 100% ownership.
Yeah, I mean, it's a chess game, man. Everybody gets to choose to play their game a little bit differently, and you got to make strategic moves. And it's important to have good friends in the industry that you can ask for advice on. I'm pretty grateful for that, of just peers, whether they're in the industry, out of the industry, of how I'm trying to approach it. But I'm pretty simple, pretty basic. Like I'm like always just focused really on just, I don't know. I try to block it, like it's the only sticky note I have on my computer, is block out the noise. So it as much as I can to just like limit distractions and just be like, all right, cool. Just like get back to the main things that we know help grow the business. And, so far it's worked. And now I'm just trying to figure out how do we just keep taking it to the next level. So it's, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Always taking it to the next level. Casey, what are you saying?
Just saying, good on you.
Yeah. Well, Josh, thanks for dropping by today. How does our audience learn more about Salesdash CRM and reach out and contact you directly?
Yeah, so if you want to check out Salesdash, our website, salesdashcrm.com. You can check out all that general information about us, what we do. You can even sign up for a free trial. We do a 14-day free trial, risk-free. And then feel free to always reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's Josh Lyles. Or, just go to our page, Salesdash CRM on LinkedIn. And you can email me directly too if you want, josh@sales-crm.com. Won't hide the email. Always checking in on it, and pretty responsive for the most part.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Casey, any party thoughts?
No. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Josh. Pleasure learning more about Salesdash CRM. Love it. You put good energy out. I think good things come your way. Shoot Josh an email, josh@
Salesdashcrm.com.
There it is.
There it is.
Appreciate you guys having me.
You
enjoyed it.
You bet. And everybody else out there, just stay warm, make some margin, document your calls, use your CRM. It'll just make your life easier in the long run, and enjoy life.
Amen to that.
Until next week, next Thursday, 2 p.m. live here online. Enjoy it.
See you, Kev.